What's happening?
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. So we can get right into the story, but
go.
Like we're in the radio hosts for EXP show, right? All of the people, and I'm like, it's been awful quiet in there. And I went to go look, and I was like, we need to get on some people's shows. Like, who wants to talk? Come on, let's go. And you're like, I'm in, and you're
let's
like,
do
get
it
on my show. And I'm like, I'll get on your show. You get on my show. Let's just talk about it. So
exactly. No, I'm excited. I know I've been in that group, and a couple of times I've like reached out and, hey, who, because just for whoever's listening out there, we have EXP's radio show. And so we all get to submit our podcasts, and we all, get to participate in that. So then we have this whole group chat of everybody who are all the hosts for all these podcasts. And so it's always fun to go in there and see what other people are doing and what's going on. And I'm like, we need to be on each other's podcasts. Like, we all got some cool podcasts out there that are a lot of fun. And so,
yeah, so much. And I mean, I know Ian in there is doing his best, and he gets overwhelmed, and, he shot up a message. He's like, man, hey, thanks. It's just, we got to keep going. He goes, hey, I got a couple ideas. I was like, let's go. So it's really good. I think we all need to be nudged every now and then, and just understand, the power of community and the power of being together and collaborate and share ideas and share stories. And it's so important. And you look at kind of things fundamentally that won't change, right? Yeah. Even with the alignment with AI, connections, relationships, storytelling, those things will never change. And it's just important, to be able to utilize the connections and the platforms that we have to be able to tell those stories.
100%. I mean, I think we're probably more connected than we've ever been in history. I know, at least in my, lifetime, but crazy as it is, like, we're like all kind of craving this connection, right? We always want to kind of see the whites of people's eyes and, see their face and how they react and get feedback and thoughts and ideas. And that's where the true power is. I mean, the quality of the people that you hang out with and the people that you have conversations with greatly impacts the quality of your own life.
Quality of your own life, and also, the quality of decisions that you make. And I'm always fascinated at, decision making and how and why, people make decisions. And, one of the things that definitely want to hear kind of your story, your journey on getting into, into a company that's not really known, and being able to, trust that you're making the best decision, moving forward.
It is interesting. And so, I'll kind of take you all the way back, so to speak, to the beginning is, I got licensed in 1993 to sell real estate. And it's when interest rates were an all-time low of 8%. And my husband was in the mortgage business. He's like, I had been a cocktail waitress, and we'd been in the bar business, and he goes, why don't you get your real estate license? You could do refis. And I'm like, okay. We had a young son at home. So I got my real estate license. I did loans for about a year. I hated it. I said, this is not for me. So God bless all the mortgage people out there. You guys have one of the hardest jobs on the planet. I was like, I'm not doing that. I was now pregnant with our second son. And I said, I think I'm going to go work for somebody in the real estate arena. So I ended up going to work for a top REO broker at the time. And I was his assistant. I had a 5-year-old, and I'm carrying my little newborn in a little cart and baby carriage. And his phones would ring off the hook. I'd answer the phones. I'm like, Luigi, they want to see houses. And he's like, okay, well, go show them houses, you guys. And now it's kind of funny because all this clear cooperation stuff is coming out. And back then, this is how old I am, we didn't have the MLS. We had books. And so you had to meet once a week and get updates on, stuff. And so I'd go show him houses. I'd come back. I'm like, they want to write an offer. He goes, well, write an offer. I'm like, okay. And luckily the contracts were 4 pages back then, right? So I wrote my contracts, Well, I ended up selling 18 houses in my first 6 months. I said, I think I like this real estate gig, right? So like all quickly successful, super cocky young people, I said, oh, I'm going to go open my own brokerage because, that's a smart thing to do when you know what you're doing. So opened my own brokerage in January of 1996. And I was just small independent, just was, having babies and working from home. And people started saying they wanted to work with me. I'm like, okay, so shortly thereafter, we ended up opening an office. We started building and growing the company, independent brokerage. And then in 2009, when the market was horrible, we went to like some REO conference and met this franchise. They're like, we can help you grow. So we ended up joining a franchise, becoming a partners with a franchise. Big mistake, number 8,472, but that's a big one. We joined that franchise. We built our brokerage to about 120 agents. And now it's around 2014. The REO market's going away. So we're back to traditional, sales and that kind of thing. And I started thinking, man, I don't think I want to do this. What can we sell this company? Mm. We started looking at what it would take to sell the company. And for any of you guys who have brokerages out there, small brokerage, big, whatever, they look at a couple of things. Number one, are you profitable? And are you profitable without you as the broker owner? Or can this company run? Is it self-sustainable without you in charge? And then I was part of a franchise, so I was only 5 years into a 10-year agreement. And so I would have had to have sold it to somebody who wanted to operate that franchise. And it was a relatively young, not very well-known franchise. So when I started to pull my production out of the equation and really looked at the company, we were hemorrhaging, right? 3 offices, 8,000 square feet, copiers, printers, staff, marketing. I mean, the list goes on and on. I was like, well, this is insane. I could literally go back to being just do my own deal, run my own team, and I could probably make a ton more money. So we went round and round for a bit. We finally sat down. I went to the franchisors. They're like, oh, no, it's your fault. You're not profitable. I was like, okay, whatever. So we ended up shutting the doors. We closed the doors. And 100 of our agents scattered like ants, so to speak. They went running off to other brokerages. 20 of them said, we're going wherever you go. I'm like, okay. So we got out of the franchise, went back to being just a small little independent, had no intentions or desire of ever joining another company. I'm like, heck no, that was one of the worst experiences of my life. I'm not doing it. I got recruited by everybody. I got flown to Mega Camp and Remax's event, all that. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. Finally, it was October of 2016. So almost 2 years after we had shut down our brokerage when I got a phone call from Brent. Now I'd known Brent for a long time, good friend of mine. He had even at one point considered buying into the franchise we were in. We'd talked about that and he decided against it. He calls me. I'm at Disneyland with my boys. I go, oh, Brent, I'm at Disneyland. Give me a call next week. He goes, okay. So then Tuesday, he calls. He goes, hey, do you want to go to lunch? For you guys who know Brent, he's super enthusiastic. I'm like, well, where are you, Brent? He goes, I'm across the street. I'm like, okay. So I go, all right, I'll come have lunch with you. So I go have lunch, spends about an hour asking me all kinds of stuff, never once mentions EXP. And I'm like, okay, Brent, what are you selling? I know you're selling something. He'd been involved in all kinds of stuff. I go, what are you selling? What is it? And he goes, meet me at my office tomorrow morning at 8 and bring Joe, my husband, Joe. And he goes, don't be late. I'm like, oh, okay, Brent. Right. And so my husband and I got up, we went to his office the next morning. I'm like, what did you do? This isn't your office anymore. Cause he had been he was with Keller Williams before. And now he was in like this Regis suite. And I'm like, what are you doing? We were so confused. So we go in, we sit down in his office. He's got Rob Flick, who did live go-to meetings back then. I don't know how you got brought in, but that's how we got brought in. So Rob's doing this live thing. Brent is sitting there the whole time eyeballing me. Like I picked up my phone and he's like, put your phone down. This is a true story. And I kept looking at him and I'm watching this thing with Rob and I'm literally about 10 or 15 minutes in. I'm like, this makes sense. And I looked at my husband. I said, I think we should do this. And my husband's like, well, let's, finish watching it. Let's go back and talk, and all that. Okay. So, I literally get teared up. I got emotional when I looked at it because it just made sense after having ran a brokerage for 22 years and all that went into that. And I just knew, I mean, we had blown through our brokerage. We had blown through all of our money, all of our retirement, several $100,000 in debt. It was a hot mess. And so we watched the rest of it, and I said, well, we're going to go home and talk. We were up all night long, like Jay says, when you can't unsee it. And I'm thinking, how am I going to tell my agents again, we're moving, right? I went through all the psychology of it. And at the end of the day, I said, you know what? We have to really just do what is best for us and our family. And this makes sense. And so back then, it's kind of funny because Brent tells a story too. It was like a, backwoods road with, all the potholes and everything. I mean, it was a hot mess. I'm not going to lie. It took us over a month to onboard the EXP. And there were only 1,400 agents at the company. So it was a hot mess. And I remember Glenn had come out and we all went to dinner, and it's so funny because I mean, it's different in some ways, but it's still the same in a lot of ways,
It is. And, to your point, and I don't think you really understand at that point, more so unless you've been in a situation to where you're running your own shop. And, that was us. And so we were, I didn't have my brokers. So we were dependent upon another agent, very dear friend, but he had to wear that broker hat.
Yeah.
And you start to look at that piece. You look at, I'm writing the E&O check every month.
Oh,
I'm writing the check to the attorney because the attorney's got to oversee and make sure that we're staying compliant, just in our relationship that we have with them. And it was more about, for me and for us in our decision, it was more about what I didn't have to worry about anymore than what I was going to gain. And I think that's really important for a lot of people when they're talking about opportunities. Most people are going to move to another opportunity because it's removing a pain, right, instead of being able to provide, euphoria, right? Always give the difference between, a vitamin company or a painkiller. And you never want to be the vitamin company. You always want to be the painkiller. And I think for us, for me personally, it was hard because in just like for you, right? When you build your baby, you build your business, and it's a part of you. Sometimes we latch onto that identity and we got to write it. We got to write it down, right? We got to be, write it all the way to the bottom of the ocean. And sometimes that's not the smart move.
Yeah. It's the Titanic and you don't realize it, I mean, it is interesting because there is so much of it that's ego involved, right? Like I was really caught up in the name of my company at the time. I'd had it for, 22 years, my email, all that. My license plate said, Realty First, like the whole bit. It was like, that was my deal. And I remember shortly after we joined EXP, the funny thing is, and it's minor to many, but it was a big deal to me. I literally went and got my license plate changed to thanks EXP.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then I remember having a conversation one day with our state broker at the time. And some little goofy thing came up. When you're your own broker, you kind of make the rules. I mean, obviously you have compliance stuff, but for the most part, you kind of do what you want.
Yeah.
Right. And so there was I'll never forget, it was on a VA no-no, and she required the proof of funds on a VA no-no. I'm like, why would you need that? It's a VA no-no. There's no money. She goes, was there an earnest money deposit? I said, yeah. She goes, well, let me point out to you in the contract where you need to have that. And I was like, and first I was getting all like, defensive. I'm like, I don't need this crap and whatever. And then all of a sudden I was like, you know what? This is all your deal, your responsibility. You're in charge. I'm going to do whatever you say, because guess what? If there's a problem with it, it's on you, not on me. Right. And that was like literally the defining moment where I just like let go and said, this is amazing. This is the best decision we ever made. And I was so glad to be there, because all that pressure, like you're talking about, all that stress, all that weight on your shoulders felt like it was just like lifted off.
Yeah.
And that now I could actually do my favorite parts of what I always loved to do, which was help agents and inspire them and encourage them and, and do whatever they needed. I could help people in ways that I never had the opportunity. I mean, even as my own brokerage, I had a big brokerage by most standards, but I could only grow in my backyard.
Yeah.
Right. I had like maybe 100-mile radius unless I wanted to go get licenses and all this other stuff. And now with EXP, I have, close to 500 people around the country, which I never, and people that I would have never met in my wildest dreams. I would have never had conversations with. I would have never had the opportunity to work with them, to get to know them, to help them, or get help and support from them. It's like collaboration that I've never seen in my 31-year career in real estate. I can't imagine being anywhere else.
Yeah, it is. It is. And we were so close sighted at the time, and obviously knowing Brent for years, he wasn't, I mean, he was obviously, catapulted and helped make the initial connections for us at the very first, EXP con we went to in Fort Lauderdale in 2017. And, from where we were coming from and with the coaching organization and the things that we were doing, we walked in there and it felt like NAEA. It really did. I mean, because that night, because we walked in, it was the awards gala, and there were, I think there were maybe 400 people at EXP Con, and they were celebrating 4,000 agents. And so, but it was like an NAEA conference. It was like one of our events. It's like, oh, I coached him. Oh, I coached him. Oh, I coached her. What is going on here? And being able to get into those type of conversations that we were able to have, and being able to see that. I think for me, and I'd be really curious for you. I mean, obviously stepping in, you seeing it, Rob's conviction, Brent's energy, his conviction, but probably over time now you can really look back and see the kind of the steps that you're really glad you made the decision. And, for us, it was in Fort Lauderdale at EXPCon in 2017. Brent had set up, Vicky was president at the time. So we had breakfast with Vicky, and then we had cocktails with the GOAT, with Gene afterwards. But lunch was really special. And it was in one of the back rooms downstairs. It felt like a dang mob movie we were in. And we're sitting down, and Kinder and I are middle of the table. On the other side is Glenn and Jason. And then you got Brent, you got Al, you got Andrew Gaydosh, you've got very different Alex Piak, you've got, all of these people, and we're just surrounding the table. It was really like kind of like a mob movie scene. And Glenn just goes off for about 25 minutes talking about the vision. Yeah. And I think for me, because I'm such a proponent of vision, because I've been through situations, the whole without a vision, the village will perish. I've been through a couple situations personally. And so I get the whole, you have to have a big compelling vision, because if people can't believe they can accomplish their dreams by being a part of your vision, they're going to go find somebody else's vision to be a part of. 100%. And listening to Glenn just share the vision. And, I remember standing up and looking at Kinder. I was like, man, I was in, but I'm way in. Yeah. And I'm hearing the core values. I'm hearing, what EXP real estate is to the whole big picture of things. And it's just really was wild. But was even wilder was that next year in Orlando when they were still doing shareholders, and listening to Glenn give the update of, we did this, we did this, we did this, we did this. And I was like, that dude sat there at that table and told us, here's what's about to happen. And it played out exactly like he said. And I think that's where the belief in that comes into. But, for me, looking back and knowing my decision-making filters, and I had to understand the vision. I had to understand the values. I had to understand, one, I knew you were removing a lot of pain for me. So thank you for that. But what next? So looking back, I mean, you've been riding in this game, for a while. You've seen a lot of different markets. Seeing how we're kind of positioned with EXP, given the state of the climate of the market, of the country. I mean, of course you don't have your crystal ball, but like, what are you seeing into the future, kind of the way things are trending, the way things are moving?
Well, I think a couple of things, just to backtrack a little bit. I actually spoke at the shareholders in February of that year before you joined. So I joined maybe 6 or 8 months before you guys did. And I remember hearing Glenn's vision. And when I was in the process of joining is when Vicky was the president, and she called me and I spent like an hour on the phone with me. Yeah. And then Glenn flew out and had dinner with us. And, it made me feel, because I was in a pretty low place. I'm not going to lie. When we joined, I mean, after shutting down our company, we had a lot personally going on, and it was an emotional roller coaster. And to sit and listen to Glenn and his concept and his vision. Now, keep in mind, he had just opened in 2009. So he'd only been 7 years, a little under 7 years when we joined. So things were in the really early stages. Mm-hmm. And I remember him just being so humble and so genuine. I think that's what was the most important. Like I laugh now jokingly because he still wears the same blue sport coat that he was wearing when we met. I still see him with it on occasion. And I just love that about him. That's just who he is. He's genuine, and he genuinely wants what is best for people. And I'll have to tell you, when Leo stepped in, I met Leo like 20 years ago in the REO days, and he was like this young punk, who was out there just crushing it. He was like doing all kinds of stuff, and always such a genuine, nice guy. But he was young and he was just killing it out there. I'm like, man, this guy's going somewhere. Who would know all these years later, he'd be running the company that I'm at. And I don't think we could have a better person running the show right now on the planet. And
I think to what you just said, cutting your teeth and building your career of having to navigate the REO world during that time period, sets you up to be able to really handle anything the market's going to throw at you.
Well, I 100% agree. And I think I feel the same way about Leo that I do about Glenn, is that he's so genuine. Like the funny thing is that I was at EXPCon right when Leo had gotten hired, but he wasn't CEO yet. He was whatever his position was before, marketing or something.
Running the company in the background.
Right. But he didn't have the official title, right?
And I had strategy officer or something, I think it was.
Yeah. I hadn't seen him in 15 years or whatever. And honestly, I kind of forgot who he was for a minute, in all fairness. And he comes up and he's like, Marguerite, how are you? It's so good to see you. And I'm like, so good to see you. And thank God we had name tags. I'm like, Leo, what are you doing here? He goes, well, what are you doing here? I said, well, I've been here a while now. He goes, well, I just got here. And he goes, I'm super excited about what's coming. I'm like, well, I can't wait to hear all about it. Right. But the fact that he remembered my name made me feel, important and made me feel special. Goes back to exactly what Glenn has done as well and what he built it on. But with all the changes that have been going on, and some are good, some are challenging, right? And sure. I think all the changes so far have been positive in a lot of ways. It's all in the perspective and how you look at it. But I don't think we could have a stronger, better person to navigate this show, so to speak, this hot mess. And I loved what he said early on. He goes, there's going to be a messy middle, and we're kind of in that messy middle right now, right? But he's so forward in such a positive way. He's so, I don't even know how his brain works. He's got to be like a unicorn on the planet or something. The way that he thinks and the way he puts stuff together, but more importantly, how he makes people feel. Like if I'm going into battle, I want to be following that guy, right? I don't want somebody up there who's kind of like, pussyfooting around and, oh, well, maybe, and we're thinking about it and, trying to be all politically correct. I want somebody who's a get shit done kind of person. Yeah. I like your line back there. And it's like, that's the kind of person that I want to be affiliated and associated with. And we could not have a better person in that role right now. And I love how he hops on to some of our calls. He goes, hey, just want to let you guys know it's going to get loud. I'm going to be loud. We're like, let's go. Like the whole group is like, let's go. What can we do to, he gets us all fired up. And that's really when you're having a tough time, when things are rough and you're down in these like pits and you're dealing with things, you need a light, and you need somebody who says, look, we're going this way. Let's go. You need someone who's making decisions, not looking at you saying, well, you might want to get up today. You might want to think about this. No, we need somebody who says, get your ass out of bed. Let's go. Right. Let's do it. Let's do what we need to do. And that is how I feel about Leo. And I could not be more proud. And I say this all the time. I've been here now going on 9 years. If this company did not make sense, I could bounce today and start my own company. Mm-hmm. Nothing would keep me from like, okay, I'm out. I'll go start my own gig, make it. I've done it before. I've screwed up before. I've, built and crashed companies. I've, all that stuff. Nothing would keep me from bouncing tomorrow and starting over. And I'm feel blessed every day to be here.
No, I agree 100%. And, thinking back through all that you've seen and learned over the last 8-9 years, right? Being here, and you have that confidence that you could go do that. I mean, for you, how has it helped you kind of craft and design and build your business during this time frame? And, how much has it continued to evolve and grow?
Well, I think that helped me immensely. I mean, I have 5 times what I had, before in an independent brokerage, and with not all the expenses, not all the headache, not all the stress, not all the,
liability.
And it honestly never became more impactful than, 2020 came along, right? COVID year. And I remember the best saying was, number one, we were built for it. Like, people were all panicking. Like, we're all good. We did our conferences online. We're all good. But where it really became impactful was in June of that year, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. And I'm all good now. So, I'm all healed 5 years. I want to say clean and sober, but that's not it. It's cancer-free. Cancer-free. I'm not too. But the fact is that I remember sitting there thinking, who's going to take care of my family? Like, what's going to happen? I was panicking, right? I mean, I got 6 kids and grandkids. Like, who's going to float this boat if I'm not around? And that day, it was the 22nd of the month, and I got revenue share that month. And when I got my revenue share check, it was enough to pay my bills, which allowed me to relax and say, you know what, my family's going to be okay. I can take care of myself. I can focus on my health instead of being out there, trying to open doors and do listing appointments and do all that kind of stuff. I could focus on my health, and that was most important. That revenue share changed my life, and that of countless other people that allowed me to have an option other than just, showing houses for the rest of my life. And that, to me, I don't know. I know there's a lot of copycats out there, trying to do it,
sure.
But we were here first of all, right? And number 2 is that the truth is I don't know. I have not heard other companies saying we're literally changing lives. Like, literally. Like, taking a single mom and helping her earn a few $100s a month that helps pay for groceries or cell phone or car payment. I don't know another company out there that's done that. We were able to completely remodel our home thanks to, EXP stock and, buy other properties and just change the trajectory of our entire family.
Yeah.
When just 9 years ago, we were broke, lots of debt, trying to figure out how we're going to get out of this hot mess we created, thinking we were doing the right thing. So, I mean, I think the impact that we have the impact that has already been made by EXP is insane. We've completely changed the entire industry. Mm-hmm. We've changed the model for the industry. And if you think about these companies that have been around for 100+ years, and we completely changed it. And now there's people trying to be more like us than trying to be like the tradition. So, I mean, I'm only excited about what is to come. I just can't even imagine what goes on in Leo and Glenn's brains and the stuff that they're trying to do to just keep stacking the benefits and stacking and stacking and stacking and stacking. I mean, I don't know what's coming next, but I'm excited about it. I'm not nervous about it. Right. With the industry changing, I can see why people are nervous, and they probably should be.
Right. Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. I think, when you're on it's one of my favorite on the Bible verses in Matthew, right? Build on solid foundation or build on sand. And I think we're starting to see who's built on sand and who's built on solid foundation. Yeah. And I think, for me, the, looking at kind of where the state of everything is. And like even Leo's move to aggressively and go fast with the decision with Zillow, the decision with why we want, we don't want, the cooperation and the visibility and everything available, because and we were talking about this a little bit earlier today, but was around having an experience from looking at how real estate is done in other countries. And once you have that global perspective, then you're like, listen, like we got it right, even if there's some things that we don't agree with, or whatever the case may be. But it's like, listen, real estate in the US is right. We have all these other countries, and until you understand what it's like for the consumer. And we were talking about one of the things that Leo was talking about in there was like, listen, if you think off-market properties is not the best, that supply and demand, all of the eyeballs get access to it to be able to get the best competitive offer. Like he gave an example, like, sold no days on market, 23% below the averages in. And it's like, it's not what they just cashed out, but now everybody else in the neighborhood is affected by that decision, right? Being able to do that. And so being able to go that route, and it's a hot mess trying to find any type of information in most any other countries as it talks about being with real estate. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it all starts, with great leadership, great direction, especially in times of uncertainty. But to your point, right? You look at competition. I'm grateful that these companies are trying to iterate on the model, because we could have got real complacent real fast, being, like you said, first to market, clear advantage in the marketplace. Like if we weren't being pushed and like, hey, oh, here's a kink in their armor, we're going to do this. Hey, here's another kink in the armor. And if we're not coming in fast, adjusting and making decisions to make the model better, who knows, right? We could have got complacent, 4 or 5 years ago.
Well, and that's a great perspective to have, because I think, some people get all panicked about, competition, right? And competition is healthy. In most situations, it's healthy. It pushes you to push a little harder, to do things a little differently, to think outside of the normal box, to think, differently about the way things are done. And, it's funny because even when you talk about off-market properties, I've never been a huge proponent. I mean, there are examples where it makes sense, right? But they're few and far between. Most times off-market properties are to the benefit of the agent. Like there's a well-known agent here in our market who is always publicizing all these off-market properties. And I'm like, okay, why? How is that to the best interest of the consumer? How?
Exactly.
I mean, maybe it is, but I don't see that it is. Who that benefits directly is the agent, not necessarily the seller. It's kind of like, I remember the days of short sales. For those of you who remember those.
Oh boy. Yep.
And the only person who made any money in a short sale most of the times was a real estate agent.
That's it.
Nobody else made money but the agent.
We knew how to play the game. That was the opportunity in the market during that time, right? You either right. figure out where the opportunity was, but you're right. Like, we took upfront money, right? So that helped with cash flow. We knew it was going to take time, right? Months and months to get the deal done. You're finding investors, you're wholesaling deals off, you're getting a piece of the pie here. Like, yeah, it was a lot. I mean,
there are situations where, it makes sense. But for the majority of people, to sell your home off market is not benefiting you. And so, as an industry, when you start talking even too about, are you built on a solid foundation? Or are you built on sand? I think that there's this game of cards kind of going on right now, right? Like a poker game. And like, I've heard a few people who are joining some of these other copycats. Well, I want to get in on the ground floor so that I can be like a Brent Gove. I'm like, well, if you were a Brent Gove, you would have been Brent Gove at EXP, right? Like, you're not a Brent Gove, and he's a unicorn, and he's an amazing human being in all aspects of it. So instead of trying to be more like him, just be you and see what you can do in your own world. But they're trying to build, like, I think of it back I think of it back in the days before REO and short sale crashed a little bit, where people were buying for these quick flip equities, right? They'd go buy a house and 6 months later it was selling for 100 grand more, or even a month later they'd buy new homes. And I remember thinking, that's kind of like quicksand. That can't possibly last. Now, I obviously had no idea what was going to happen in the market, but it didn't last. And those people lost. A lot of the people who got in last, who were trying to be like somebody else, lost their ass, right? Plus some. So it's interesting because, and I'm not saying that's going to happen with these other companies. Who knows? I mean, I wish them well. I wish them the best. But for me, I think you're right. You have to be behind somebody who genuinely has a true vision, not just a vision to, raise a bunch of money for stock, sell a bunch of money for stock, and then leave on their yacht. They have a vision for what is best for the agents and best for the consumer. And I mean, I think that's the right place to be. The industry is changing. There are things that are, in my 31 years, I've seen a lot of changes. But at the end of the day, we can take this all the way back to our first words in this conversation, is how important the eye to eye is, how important those relationships are, how important it is to sit down and talk to people and see what is in their best interest. How can you help them? How can you serve them? And I think if that's your main focus, which I believe it is, of Glenn and Leo and the rest of the leadership here at EXP, then I don't think you can go wrong. If Glenn was just to say, I'm building this so I can make $1 bazillion and go retire, he would have done it already. Right? Because he's set for life. I mean, don't get me wrong. But the fact is, he didn't make his money and say, okay, peace out. See y'all later. Have a good time. He's in there still continuing to make sure that there's so many more people. I think years ago, and I don't remember if it was him or Brent or somebody, but their vision was how many millionaires could they make in this company? Not just them. How many could they make? I don't know what the number is now, but there's got to be a significant amount of people who've made more than $1 million in revenue share.
Oh, and absolutely.
And not just that, but stock or whatever. I know we have, and we've been blessed, but it's to have that vision. I don't think we can go wrong. And I think that they're definitely ahead of the curve. And one other thing, you were talking about other countries. I didn't even realize that, to be honest with you, until Leo started talking about that. And it's like, they don't have MLSs. They don't have shared information, and data is, and has always been power. They don't have the data. And the advantage we have with our MLS system is we have access to the data. I can now go look in your neck of the woods, which I don't know anything about where you live. And I could probably pretty quickly figure out the values of the homes in your market within minutes by logging on and looking at, Zillow and all the different websites. You can't do that in other countries. I tried, actually. I'm like, oh man, what would it be like to live in Italy? Let me go look and see how much homes are selling for. Well, how do I know that's even worth it? Well, who knows? Yeah. So we have a powerful system here that's worth defending. And I'm super grateful and honored to be in the corner of the most powerful people who are defending what we do. I think that's a vital decision.
Yeah. I want to pick your brain a little bit here, because shift gears for a second. I want you to talk about your book. Yeah, I think, I love the title. So I think, definitely has me curious, the 100 things I love about you. Yeah. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I'll tell you kind of the brief story. Here's a little picture of my book, but so my husband and I have been together 39 years coming up in May. And, nice. Every relationship has challenges. We have, he had 3 kids with his first wife. We had 3 together. So we have 6 kids. We have 8 grandkids. But at the time, this was at a time when, we had young kids at home. I was working full time in real estate. He was traveling a lot. He was a regional Western something for a bank. So he was traveling a lot and things get a little rough. You got young kids, you're trying to figure it out. Right. And the stress was at an all-time high. And I remember waking up one day and I said, today's the day. We're either going to a counselor or an attorney. You decide. And like most men, he's like, huh? He's oblivious. Right? Luckily, he's a smart man. He says, I'm going to make an appointment with a counselor. So we go to the first counseling appointment. They're like, why are you here? He's like, because she made me. I said, wrong answer, jerk. And We go to the second appointment. It talks about family background. His parents were born in Spain. He comes from an old world Latin, family, stay married till death do you part and all that. My mom had been married 4 times and I had no good role models of relationships or men or anything. So very different, diverse backgrounds. So we go to the third appointment separately and the therapist says, so are you done? Or is there a chance that you're willing to work on this relationship? I said, well, he's at least here. So since he's at least here, I'm willing to see if we can work on it. He goes, well, I'd like you to make a list of the things that you love about him. I go, I don't think I could do that right now. I said, I did that pros and cons list and the cons way outweighed the pros. He goes, well, let's set the cons aside for a minute. Let's see if we can focus on the pros. And I said, I don't know. He goes, can you put a list together of 10 or how many can you do? And I go, I don't know. He goes, well, you strike me as competitive. Give me a number. And I said, well, if I could do 1, I can do 100. Right. He goes, okay. So I leave the therapist appointment for a few days. I can't think of nothing. I'm like, I don't like the way he smells. I don't like the way he looks. I don't like, I didn't like nothing about him. After a few days, I wake up and there's tea next to my bed. And my husband either puts a tea or a smoothie or something next to my bed every morning. I'm like, all right, well, I guess I like that about him. And I started slowly. I'm like, well, he's a good dad. Like everybody loves Joe. If you've not met my husband, he's a stand-up comedian. So he's funny. I started to make this list. And truth be told, I only made it to 45. 45 was a lot, but I made it to 45 and I gave him that list for our wedding anniversary and it saved our relationship. Yeah. Now, I'll tell you the caveat to this whole thing is that Joe didn't do a thing. He didn't change anything. The only thing that changed was my perspective, right? I started to focus on the things that I loved about him instead of focusing on all the things that were wrong. And I think that is really significant in relationships because too many people give up too easy and too quick. They start focusing on all the stuff that they do wrong. And they don't think about, they forget all the reasons why you fell in love with them, right? Like my husband makes the joke because he's a comedian. He says, in the beginning, everything I said was funny. Now everything's a damn joke. And it's true in so many relationships, not just in your personal relationships, but even in life in the real estate industry, right? Like with all the stuff that's going on, we could focus on, oh my God, this is the end of the world and we're going to be out of business and we're not, we're all losing our livelihood. Or we could focus on, hey, there's ways to make this work. These are some options, what we can do. And so it became really valuable to me. And I'd told that story many times to friends and family who were struggling in relationships. And everyone says, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. So I did. It's a book about that. It's got a lot of little stories in it. And it has all these little pages where you can write in it the things that you love about your significant other. So I'll send you one, John. You can check it out at 100thingsiloveaboutyou.com and you can order one. So, but it's been fun. It's been fun to do the book. And I hope that somebody reads this story, and I've heard lots of success stories, and it helps them salvage their relationship, right? Yeah. And helps them find a way to work through all the things that drive you crazy and the things that upset you, because, those challenges that you go through in life are temporary and they come and go, and you're going to have a lot more of them. And, you got to find a way to work through those and find the things that you really love. Like one of our things is we never talk about the word divorce, because if we do, it's an option. Yeah. If it's not an option, you'll find a way, you'll figure it out. I mean, short of, extreme things, domestic violence, stuff like that. But the truth is that in most relationships, you're just having a rough time and you've gotten short-sighted. You can only see the things that are wrong. You can't see that big vision, which, takes us even back to EXP, to be able to see that vision and see what that looks like. I look now 39 years later, and I'm so glad we made it. I feel really blessed that we're still together, and, we got our kids and life, and we've built this life that if I'd have given up back then, who knows where I'd be. But I'm glad I didn't give up. And I'm glad he didn't give up on me.
Yeah. It's so powerful. And it's, that the divorce thing is a real problem, right? I mean, it is a real problem. And if you can, most people just don't have the tools to be able to navigate the storms that always come in it's just life, right? We're dealing with other human beings, and there's always going to be storms, and just having the tools. But, when your brain is forced to focus on the good and because you've been looking at the bad for so long, and that's all you can think about. And sometimes we're kind of wired that way. I know if you haven't done, the Working Genius, it is just an incredible insight, another tool. And I'm a DW, so discernment and wonder. So, my head's always 30,000 feet in the air, right? And coming up ideas and just always, but my discernment usually brings me back down to earth. It's like, that's a bad idea. That would never work. And so it's easy for me to default on the negative instead of staying on the positive. And that's one heck of a tool, is that, if I have to share one thing that I love about you every day, that just reprograms your brain to be focusing and looking for the good. It's like having a gratitude practice, and that you're going to write down 3 things that you're most grateful for at the end of the day. You program your brain to focus, to look for things throughout the day. And it's just choosing how to program and how you look at things. That's a great date night question. One of the date night questions that we always ask are, the one, this is the one thing I did wrong, and this is the one thing you did right. Because it's easy for us to say, man, you did this wrong, you did this wrong. It's like, I did this wrong. And then it forces you, like, man, what did she do right? Oh, you did this right. And when you can start that open kind of communication, it just reprograms and changes. But, that carries over into your leadership, how you deal with clients, how you deal with your team, and it's one of the things that I think, you can universally put tools in that can help you in all facets, and even your health, right? Even the relationship with yourself.
I think that, to me, probably the most impactful thing is that learning not to take things so personally, right? And that's probably, from the 4 agreements, that's probably one of the most impactful things in a relationship, is that we have a tendency, because we're so close to this person, to take things personally, right? And oh, you got what you got there? Oh, yep, my favorite book. I have it over here too. It's on my back shelf. But I love that, because, like a perfect example is you're home, you're getting stuff done, you're working on projects, and your spouse comes in and they've had a really rough day at work, and they're just coming in, they're just trying to relax and take a couple of minutes to debrief. And you're launching into them the minute they come in the door. Well, now there's a fight. It's like, it had really nothing to do with you. It had nothing to do with that person, but we took it so personally. And I think if you can step back, and the older you get, the wiser you get, right? So from all the stuff you screwed up on, but the truth is that if we can step back for a moment and try to see, I think the greatest talent that anybody can develop is the ability to see through somebody else's eyes. To take a moment and see what might be going on with you, what might be, that's happening here. Because it's so impactful when you can step back for a moment and say, what's really happening here? Is this really me just like losing my mind? Was he being a jerk to me? Did he talk to me wrong? Did he whatever? Maybe you could step back and just see, hey, wait a minute. Right? Like, I really think if we could potentially see somebody's heart when they're talking, the majority of the planet, their heart is in the right place. Now, their mouth might say some stupid crap. Right? Their face might not handle things well, right? We might react wrong. But if you know me, and I feel like most people who know other people, their heart is in the right place. They didn't intend to hurt you. They didn't intend to be a jerk to you. They weren't going to say, I'm going to see what a jerk I can be to John today, right? They just had a moment, and you were there. You're collateral damage. And I really think if we could step back and not take things so personally, it would help a lot. I know that it has helped me immensely in the majority of my relationships, in learning how to handle things better, how to talk better, how to be kinder. Those are things that we can all work on. So
yeah, I agree. It's always layers deeper, right? So being able to step back, have a higher sense of emotional intelligence, which is anchored with what you're talking about with empathy. And have you seen, this is the most, it's about 4 minutes and 23 seconds. It is the most powerful video on empathy. Like, you watch this, you ain't got to say a word. You go, got it. And
I don't think I've seen it. What's it called?
So just go to YouTube and then just type in Cleveland clinic empathy. It'll pop right up. It's about 4 minutes and 23 seconds. It is the most powerful 4 minutes and 23 seconds because everything that you just talked about, when you watch that, got it.
Yeah.
You can send it to everybody and they go, got it.
Yeah.
Got it. And it's just a great reminder because, like you said, sometimes we get caught up in our own story and it's, then we're by with somebody else and it's hard. It's hard, right?
Well, we're very self-centered human. I mean, as human beings, we're self-centered, right? So we think the whole world revolves around us. And we think that everything that's going wrong is because something has to do with us. And the majority of the time, it has absolutely nothing to do with you.
Nothing to do with us.
Nothing to do with you. Like the world is not centered around you.
So true.
It really is not. And I think that's probably the hardest thing to accept. You're like, what? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
It's not about me.
It's gotta be about me.
It's got to be about me, right?
Oh, it's so funny.
And I see it so much in the younger people around me, just because I'm getting to that fine wine age. But I see some of the stuff. I'm like, dude, like that's not about you at all. Like it's not. It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with what you got going on. They weren't even paying attention. So that's probably the hardest thing to accept, is that the whole world is not centered around you. But it's also gives you some grace to relax a little bit and say, okay, I think I can go figure this out in a different way. Like I said, I have 6 kids and my youngest are 28 and 30. And then I have my niece here who's 24. And it's interesting, the problems that they have in their life. Yeah. I try not to laugh. I'm trying to take them serious. Like, oh, I totally get it. Yeah, that's rough, But I'm like, you're flipping 24 years old. Like your whole life, you got so much life to live, Like it's just entertaining to me. And I have to remember not to laugh because they're a little more sensitive about those things. But hopefully they'll all learn like we did at some point. So
yeah, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to, back to your, the 4 agreements, the most important agreement, just do your best. Yeah. Just do your best. That's really what it's about. Marguerite, This has been a pleasure. Thank you for carving out the time, jumping in and, unpacking and sharing a lot. I want to check out the 100 things I love about you.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on your show today.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, guys, we'll see you. Bye.